Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening. This is Carrie. And I'm going to do a little combination between speaking from the heart as well as sharing some things, as I've been wrestling with this idea of love. Several weeks ago, I posted a video in how in 1 Corinthians 13, the translators, in expressing what love is, literally left out the word ruka, spirit. They just didn't translate it. So as I was looking at the passage, I thought, oh, okay, so love is spirit. So when we question whether we're in the spirit or not, check yourself to see if you're in love. Anything outside of what love is, you are not in spirit. And that's just how I see it, based upon what the writings have been telling me, because I know we've always questioned that, follow the spirit wherever it leads. Well, it's what love is, it's what love does. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that listening to the spirit takes you on a wild goose chase. Listening to the spirit is listening to what love does. What is love asking you to do? And then I begin to meditate upon this a little bit further about the fruit of the spirit. So if the spirit is love, then the fruit of the spirit of love is all of the ones that we have come to know. And at some point I'm going to probably break down all of those words. But it's been translated as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. I might be missing one. There's 9 of them there. And 9 is a number that signifies completion. So those are all the things that love is. Those are all the things that spirit is. So if we see ourselves acting in a way that is contrary to all of those things, we are no longer in the spirit. We are in flesh. And if we are in flesh, then that means the ego is taken over. I say these things because I've had to wrestle with elements that I've seen externally in behaviors of people that I don't comprehend. And I know the mere principle very well. And just because I see something happening, I do not believe that that means that it's within my vessel, and that's the reason why I'm seeing it. I believe that when we are in a mirrored situation, the mirror is meant to provoke you, meaning that if you are provoked and you move out of the spirit of love, then there's something that is a catalyst for you to look at to see an area that still needs to be healed, transmuted. And if we have to justify those things that move us out of spirit, that move us out of love, that is all ego. Love does not need to justify anything. It just is. It is a spirit. It is who we are. So having said that, I'd like to now go into 1 Corinthians 13, and let's start taking a look. All right. As you guys can recall, I've highlighted this word here right near. This is ruka. And love is patient and benign. So love is patient and kind. But here they left the word spirit, ruka, out of it. And when we're talking about love, we're talking about chuba. We're not talking about rakam. We're not talking about compassion. These are those who have found life. They were once separated and they connected to their heart. And they built themselves to become one. So love as a spirit is the spirit of oneness. And the spirit reveals that to us. And it's hidden for us to find. So let's start taking a look at these words here. And if I feel like I need to go through the letters, I will. But I want to do a quick cursory glance. Now, what you will see through this website, the Peshitta, is not exhaustive at all. Many times these words that you will see have much more meanings to them, but whomever put this website together was choosing words and not all their meanings to bring forth that which is within theology. But I think there's enough here that we can take a look at to go a little bit further into these meanings than just the surface. So here is the ruach that they left out, the spirit, the wind, the breath. And we see that it's chuv or chav is the root, and so chuva, again, is love. And then long-suffering is nagar. There we go, nagar. So what causes us to be able to have patience? Well, when we connect and actually have the power within our heart and moving into the essence of the unseen that is in and all things, which is oneness, we have the word here at the end that means to like behold or to be seen. So in other words, patience is seen, and that comes from the power that is within our heart. And that is connected to love. So long-suffering and patience is part of that. And it is all the spirit. So I can say that the spirit, love, has had much patience with all of us. So moving into the next word, let's take a look here. Then we move into merry, look at this, anoint, merrily, joyfully, and rejoice. So Basham, where does the anointing come from? Where does this merriment come from? The spark that is given to us, the power on the inside, that of our heart. And it's really saying you need to connect to Mother's teaching so you can build this. Because you're building your temple so you can receive the wedding ring, which then empowers you to become part of the sea. And connecting to Ken's law of the sea, these are those that are empowered, that have been given the power of the calm waters, which is love. Now we move into love and any of them. Now I will just say this. I do find that it's interesting that we have the word for patient, and then we have benign. And then we move into love is not, right? So we already saw that there was so much more that could have been said there instead of benign, that love is, the spirit is merry. It's an anointing. It's joyful and it rejoices. This is why most of the time that when I see people and I speak to people and I make comments to people, I do things from my heart out of the merriment and the joy that I feel within in order to lift and encourage each other, not to tear each other down, because this is what love does. Love supports. Love is always trying to bring forth life, not take away. So now let's take a look at the words not. If you've watched videos that I've shared before, Lamed Aleph, even though it's translated as not, it is so much of a greater word because of that which it is holding. Lamed is a symbol that in Mother's teaching, not through the deeper hidden esoteric side, but for the part that most of us are walking in right now, the Lamed is a sign of being taught. And those who are taught usually turn around and teach that which they have learned, that which they know. And this is really teaching the way of one. This is the mystery of the many who are one. This is also the unification of the higher self and the lower self, connecting them together so that we become unified within, so that we can manifest it without. So basically, when we see this here, this is sharing with us that someone is under instruction. If they do this, if they do this, and if they do this. So, because we can see the low here over and over again. So let's take a look and see what these words that say that love is not and why we need to be instructed in the way of one. Let's dig deeper. Let's dig deeper. Oh, so if somebody has envy or is jealous, then they need to be taught the way of one. And when we look at how this is spelled, oh, there we go. It's in its root position. So if you can see right here, it's in its root position. So it's in static form. Nothing's been added. Nothing's been taken from it. But in order to resolve this, in teaching the way of one, it's telling us through the letters how to resolve it. The letters will always tell you how to resolve an issue. So somebody that has envy and somebody that is jealous has separated themselves. They're hedging themselves in on the inside with this envy and jealousy, and they haven't entered into the waters of peace. So what does this mean to us? Now the reverse side of it, which then resolves it, is find life. Go through and become as wedded ones, which means that you've married your divine masculine and feminine within, which then gives you the signet ring and the wedding ring at the level of the heart, so that you can be part of the waters of peace. But if it's in envy and jealousy, you're still needing instruction because you haven't found oneness unity yet. Because love, which we saw the root was het bet, means love are those who connect to their heart and have found oneness. They built it. They started out as being separated, but they went through the process to become chuba. Now we have the not again. So what's the next word we're looking at? So after envy and jealousy, what do we have? Let me move this up a little bit. Stirring up trouble. Stir up and trouble. So when we look at stirring up trouble, and I know that I've had people misunderstand what I say before regarding stirring up trouble, because some people thought that I was talking about doing protestings or things if there's lack of justice, and that's not what I'm talking about. Stirring up trouble, this is very interesting to see how this word was translated as stirring up trouble, but really what the letters are showing. The mem was added in front, and then the tav is put in the middle. So stirring up trouble already comes from being in a place of chaos. So if you have chaos, or chaos is leading you because you haven't entered into that place of the peaceful waters, chaos is connected to war. War means chaos. So stirring up trouble is going to war. The resolve comes by finding the covenant within you. The covenant, the very first word of the Bible, Bereshit, are those who are building themselves up as leaders, as the chiefs that have found the covenant of fire within. The resolve comes when you have become one and completed the journey with Creator, because you have traversed the way of both fires. So what does that mean? Well, we have mem tav here, which is the word for death. Whenever we have fire that comes, and this is very interesting because this letter sheen, it in simple Paleo Hebrew, it can mean tooth, it can mean ivory, it can mean consuming, but it is a symbol for fire. It is the symbol of the fire of God. But when you dig down deeper, this also means anything that is done by an animal. So whether you're gored, or if an animal bites you, or you suffer an animal attack, that is also connected to this letter. So if an animal is chewing you, now please understand that when I'm saying this, I'm not actually speaking of an animal like a dog or a cat or a horse or a cow or a lion, tiger, bear, oh my. I'm also talking about characteristics within people. So if you get bit by somebody and they gore you, then they are bringing forth a measure of death. That's why Mem Tav is here. And this is showing that there's a consuming fire within them that causes them to do this, that causes them to stir up trouble. Now in the root itself, Sheen, Gimel, Sheen, it is saying that there are two levels of fire that one must go through in order to gather and assemble themselves in which they need to mature them, to lift them up, to wean and ripen them. In other words, to produce good fruit. Fruit that is at the place where it can be done something with. And like I said, the mem was added on the front. So this means that the people that are in chaos are allowing this consuming fire of their animalistic behaviors that gore, pierce, and chew people up. And that's not love. That is not love. Then we have a word that has to do with pride. So when we operate in the level of pride, or when we're prideful, it's saying that you really need to connect to the teachings of one. Because in pride, it is a spirit of death. This is why Mem Tav is added in front of this. Because again, love does not do these things, and instruction needs to come. So we can take a look here so I can show you guys this, that it's pride. So you're not just taking my word. To be puffed up and to be proud. So this is saying that you've separated yourself. You've said you've completed the journey and you've raised yourself up, but you are actually of death. Because chaos, you've made a covenant with chaos. You've made a covenant with war. So I find that very, very interesting that that first verse is discussing those things. So when we move into the next, again, we have the lo many times, and you can say this little vav usually is translated as and. So way low, and not, and not. That's what this is. This is way low, or wela. So let's start digging deep again. Let's take a peek. What are we looking at here? So in the way of one, in the teachings, the way of one, we have this word that says visit, do, or effect. So visit, do, or effect, and this is connected to shame. That's the next word. So what do we have here? So this has to do with not bringing forth or affecting shame. It's interesting. Ayin resh is a word that means to stir oneself up. To stir oneself up. So in by itself, that doesn't necessarily look like it would be a bad thing because it has to do with an effect. So we have something that's hedging you in and then is rousing one awake or stirring oneself up in order to see that which is in the inside, whether they're poor and destitute or whether they have been raised up as a leader. So this word is in its static form, but it's very telling because it'll see what is the effect that you're having. What are you rousing awake in others? And it's saying that love does not do this, which means it does not rouse awake. It does not stir up shame at all. Because it's a door that we need to, that will take us inwardly, that will reveal something to us. And it's not part of the twin covenants of completion that bring us into oneness unity. The root is Bahat. Now it's very, very, very interesting to see this because Bet Tav is the second letter of the alphabet, which really speaks of division. So shame is an act of division, but this is also the same level that talks about the temple. So the temple, we know that we are the temple. And so that which is being revealed of our temple is something that we make covenant with. And it's meant to lead us into oneness. So what happens when somebody that does not know the way of one and stirs up this shame within somebody? This has to be revealed that shame was given place because then they come into the place of the enclosure. Tav Aleph means an enclosure, a small space. And really this small space has to do with the Holy of Holies. This is your heart. Shadow work within is usually the hardest, and shame is one of the hardest things to work through. And that's why love does not put on or arouse. or affect others in shame. The dalit is added to, and I want to bring revelation to this if you've not listened to some of the sharings that I've given before. This word dalit also means to deliver yourself from that which you have disconnected yourself from, the things that are making you ill, weak, and feeble. So shame, we need to be delivered from because it makes us weak and feeble. And how do we do that? Well, you go into the inward man. You have to do this work. You have to go in within the vessel on the inside, because bet means inside. You got to find out where this shame is coming from. And through the covenants of mother and father, they will help assist you to bring into oneness. Now, this is actually really like a triple tav here. And if you saw something that my husband shared the other day, the sign of the shadow that then is raised up to be the completed aleph tav. This is really letting you know that this is that process of how to get rid of shame if somebody has put it upon you. You have to deliver yourself on that and from that. Now let's move into the next word. Again, we have the low. So if we have the low, what are we saying that it needs to do? No, that's the wrong verse here. All right, so this has to do something about seeking for, requiring, questioning, inquiring into, own. What we're talking about here is self-seeking. This is very, very, very interesting, because many of us understand about service to others and service to self. And this is saying that they are not self-seeking. So here's the self, and here's the seeking or inquiry. So if they are self-seeking or self-inquiring, then this means that this is one that is dealing with selfishness. Love does not do this. So the resolve is go within to see what's going on in your heart. If it's not producing oneness, unity, if it's not bringing us all together, then you're in the place of separation of self. And this is actually showing you, here's that dalit lament I was showing you here, right? This is actually, this is dala. This is the root. This is the root of dalet. And dala means something that is dangling, something that is separated, something that makes you ill, weak, and feeble, because you've given it power on the inside. So this is saying that love as spirit does not do self-seeking. And this has to do with being in our own ego. This is an unrefined ego. This is one that operates through their shadow and separates, that has nothing to do with love. And it's saying that it will be seen. That's why the hey is on there. It will be revealed. Others will see this, that you are self-seeking. Then we come back into the low, again, the instruction in the way of one. So what is love, spirit, not? It is not angry. It is not angry. It is not provoked. So love is not provoked. How interesting. Pe vavresh is the root of this, and peresh, it's a word for fruit. That's very interesting. So one who has been provoked is still in the death position. And the fruit of that, of one who's in the death position, is because that power, the fruit that is coming from within, is bringing forth death. Anger is death. Now, how's the resolve? Well, when you come in through the chaotic waters, the twin covenants, those of mother and father, their signature frequencies, if you go through both of their covenants, both of their teachings of maturation, one which is the external world, the other is the internal world, you should be able to raise your frequency up and out of death. Because there's words that are being spoken and given that are the power to raise you up out of your poor and destitute state. But the fruit that is coming out, if it is death and chaos, it is not of love. It is not of the spirit. Then what do we have? The next element that we have is nor thoughtful of evil. So thoughtful of evil, this has to do with thinking. And raya is a really interesting word because raya also has to do with gates. I did a teaching a couple summers ago, As a Man Thinks, So He Is. And this is really important because when we talk about thinking, there's your raya, and look, we have death in front of it again. If we are caught in the place of thinking, which here is the root for evil or adversary, thinking evil. Love thinks of no evil. This is also a word for gate, the gate in your mind. So love doesn't think evil things because it's pure. Only death does. And it is going to be an adversary to oneness unity. This is the gate within the mind. Then we have the bish. Again, here we have that door. It's saying that you need to deliver yourself. You've got to go through the inward man and you need to begin to build, because there's a place where evil has taken root that has given power to you, and now it's become substance. So when we think and we're in that death position, we can actually cause egregores to come forth, thoughts that then turn into things that are not real, that are illusions, because we give them substance. We make them as something that is there, which it is not. Because everything is love, everything is God. Only we, through that which we think, we can create it, and we need to deliver ourselves of the things that from the inside out that we made into substance. Because what is it doing? It is consuming. It is tearing, it is gouging, it is ripping, it is very animalistic. And it is up to us, through the spirit of love, to deliver ourselves from that. And this is something that we must do so that we can stop putting these thought forms out that are adversarial. So how do we resolve that? Well, if you come into chaos, you need to learn to go through Mother's Covenant. You need to know the golden rule. Because in this realm, you can see that there's adversarial and friend, and they are one and the same. But it depends if you're in the death position, and if you are creating these forms. And if you are, then that means you need to learn the way of one. Aleph also is the letter for spirit. So Aleph is automatically connected to love. The way of one love. All right, we're going to move on. It rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. I was sharing this the other day too with a group, that this word evil, this has to do also with, it says iniquity or wrongdoing, but this is also the same word for a suckling, a babe. So here we have love does not rejoice in iniquity or wrongdoing. So again, how's the resolve? Well, teaching in the way of one love, one spirit, brings forth joy. The root is het dalet. This is also the word in a root meaning one. You can think, I and my Father are one. I and my Father are unified. This is chada. So joy comes from being one, entering into oneness unity. And this is actually meaning that this is the active form of oneness, and joy is entering into oneness unity. So what is it saying? How do we get out of this position of wrongdoing? Well, because it's also a suckling and it's a babe, that means we need to get off the milk. We need to build ourselves by going on the inside, which is really building family, because you will be able to be given the eyes to see and connect to your heart, which then instructs you in the way of one, that matures you. And we have the word but here, which is interesting. But we have mother being represented and father being represented, and the staff of authority in the middle having to do with your heart. It's all about the perception of the instruction of the heart that will rejoice and bring forth oneness, unity into truth. Let's take a look at this word truth. There's several words for truth. There's emet and there's shirar. So this word for truth is verity and truth. Verity and truth. And I know that there would be a root in this too. It doesn't say that there's a root, but there would be, because the tav aleph would be added. So Vikash would be the root of this word for truth and verity. So within, those who have compressed light in the circle of time, finding the narrow path between the light and dark, having revealed which is necessary to connect to your heart, have actually gone through the fire, and they've become one. They've entered into the chamber of their heart. Moving on. So again, it endures everything. So again, talking about the spirit of love is all things. I think it doesn't say, I mean, endureth is here, but in all things it endures. So this is also a word that means bride and mean crown. So the bride who is crowned is one who has gone through the chaos, entered into the door within their heart, delivered themselves from being ill and weak and feeble, connecting that which was once dangling, and have now found the waters of shalom. So endure, this is sabar. This has to do with hope. Let's go and pull up this analysis so you guys can see this. Preaching, declaring, bearing, enduring, nourished, and fed. So we're talking about a word that is being declared, which nourishes and feeds. Well, what is that all about? Well, when you come into the chaos, Mother is supposed to teach you the way to go in the golden rule in your external world, so that you can get the signet and wedding ring, finding the power within your heart as those who are pure and innocent, those who have been winnowed, those who are heirs to the throne, that built themselves and raised themselves up in all things. Now notice that this is no longer separated. I love it when you see things like this. So kol med dem, and now we have kol medem. So now it is a compounded word instead of being separated. And what happened? Well, this word is what happened. They were feeding and nourishing themselves on that which was giving them power within. And it's interesting that the root for bar also has to do with nourish and feed. And of course it would be that way. This is so that the bride is crowned and completed, having gone through the process of all things, and has faith. They went through the waters of chaos, and it was revealed to them the power that is found within. They became part of the stringed instrument, the chorus, that which has coherence, that which is of song. They went the way of the right hand, so they completed themselves. And so they are those who endure and hope all things. Again, over and over again, the bride will be crowned, the bride will be crowned, the bride will be crowned. And what I love about this the most is that Kaf also is a letter that means to grasp a hold of the power of instruction. So everything above was the not. Everything was, you need to be taught in the way of oneness. You need to be taught in the way of one. And then at the very end here, 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, they grasp the hold of the power of instruction. Wow. And it has to do with the blood. Everything is within our blood, within our DNA. Everything is within for us to be changed and transmuted and altered. So when we take a look here, love never falleth. This means nafal. So love as spirit. If you are out of love, if you are out of spirit, then you have fallen. And you need to learn the way of one. And here is huba. And I think this is very interesting too, because this word here, we'll pull it up. We'll take a look and see what Aramaic says. And of course, it's limited in its translation. But it's always and ever. Always and ever. Okay, so what do we see here? This word tom means completion. This means finished, completed. And this has to do with the twin covenants. This pattern right here, the two letters side by side, has to do with the cherubim. Two letters that are side by side are the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant. One is the mother and one is the father. We are the Ark. That'll have to be a teaching another day. We are the Aron. We have two teachings that are going to seem like chaos when you first enter in both of them. But it's meant to deal with death, because really the chaos comes from death. But when you shatter the mirror and you do the reverse side of it, the tom, is one who is connected to their heart, has shattered the mirror of death. And they shall never fall, because they learned the way of one. Huba, love, spirit. So I think it's a good idea for us to re-examine what we see Huba is, and the things that it is not, and the things that are not is just because someone needs to be instructed in the way of one. The fruits, that which comes from the heart. If you remember that Peyod Resh, as we open our mouth to speak, that which is a seed of life, a spark of life that is within, is either going to raise somebody up, or it's going to keep them in a position of being poor and destitute. Love doesn't fall. Love supports. So whenever we do anything that's outside of that, we are no longer in the spirit, because the spirit is love. Shlama, shalom, Chedutha, and Namaste.